Hello and welcome to this Lightroom Cityscape editing tutorial. Today I'm gonna take this beautiful sunset picture of Paris and I'm gonna turn it into a photo like this while explaining to you every single step I do from start to finish. I took this picture in the summer of 2014 on my way to Scotland, and it was shot on the Tour Montparnasse, which is an absolutely beautiful place to take pictures from in all directions that you look. Just beautiful city of Paris. This was taken a little bit before sunset, as you can see with the colors, and this was actually shot at 50mm on a crop sensor body, and a lot of people think that was taken with like 200mm, but no, really the view from there is so amazing. You can get great pictures even at 50mm. So let me get started here. First thing, I'm definitely going to raise the shadow by 100 just so I have a lot of room to work with. Then I'm going to bring down the highlights by around 80. Then I'm going to bring down the blacks, and that way we really get some contrast in the picture, and it's already a very significant difference from before to after blacks. And contrast slider itself, I'm also going to bring that to the right. The blacks really change the contrast as well, but in a way more harsh fashion than the contrast slider. Contrast really just affects the sort of medium to light contrast. So I'm going to raise that here, and clarity, I'm actually not sure if I want to add any global clarity here, because as you can see we have a pretty a lot of clarity in the foreground going into the distance where it kind of fades out, and I actually really like the look, so I don't want to ruin that by just bringing up the global clarity and introduce a lot of clarity in everything. I really want the background to be a little bit more soft so we get this sense of depth. So I think I'm just gonna add a little bit of global clarity here, and then right away take a graduated filter, reset everything, and just drag it over the foreground with a very soft edge, and then just introduce some more plus clarity for the foreground. And then I'm even gonna grab another one just for the sky and the very far background, and I'm even gonna go further into the minus clarity, so that way we really get a sense of differentiation and a sense of depth in the picture. I'm not quite sure how well you're able to see it on YouTube, but if you're viewing that on a big screen or on a print, that will definitely show up. So color temperature is another very important thing, so let me just fine tune that here. I really like the kind of warmish look, but I'm actually gonna go into the split toning first. Usually I try to keep it in a line, but this time I'm really kind of doing it more like I would edit a picture for myself. So I'm gonna go straight away down to the split toning before adjusting any color temperature, and just add a little bit of color here, a little bit of orange. Maybe just see what the other colors look like, but I really think I'm gonna go with the oranges here, and then I'm first of all gonna fine-tune the actual color that I want. I think I'd rather go a little bit more into the yellows rather than into the reds, and then I can bring down the saturation. And I really love split toning. It adds color a little bit more naturally than the color temperature slider, since it adds more in the highlights than in the shadows, which of course is going to look a little bit more natural. So I think I'm gonna add quite a lot here, and then I'm gonna go back up to the temperature slider and just see if I want to adjust something. And I actually kind of like when the foreground is a little bit colder than the background, but at the end I really don't think I need to change too much with the color temperature. In fact, I'm just gonna go like 100, 150 into the plus here, and then I'm gonna go back down to the split toning and once again fine tune the amount of saturation I want. And at the end, yeah, I think I might even bring it down just a little bit to around 40. And you know, if you want some warmth in your picture, I would highly suggest you to play around both with the split toning highlights as well as the color temperature. Don't just adjust the color temperature. You really can create a much more dynamic and a much complexer picture and complexer color if you take advantage of both of these adjustments. And another thing that I really like in my sunset pictures, pretty much uniquely, is the tint, just to bring it a little bit more towards the right, towards the magenta, just a little bit, because I think that works really well for sunset pictures. And then white is also a thing that I should cover, and I'm gonna bring that to the right and just stop before anything clips. You can hold down the Alt key to see whenever anything clips, so I would definitely suggest you not to go too far here. So I'm just gonna bring that down and stop before anything clips. I think that looks pretty good here. The last thing that we have here is the vibrance and saturation. If you want to change anything here, change the vibrance. Saturation just adds color. You see here way more unnaturally, while vibrance really adds color, way more subtle. And I think that slider is far superior to the saturation slider. So since it's a raw file and I really want to get a lot of color in this sunset picture, I'm actually going to raise the vibrance by quite a bit, around 30, 35. I think works pretty well. Here's before, here's after, just a little bit of a difference in this picture. And with that said, we're done with the basics adjustment, so I'm gonna go straight away down to the tonal curve. And here you just want to play around with these sliders. Now a thing that I really love to do is bring up the highlights, and the highlight slider down here is really completely different to that highlight slider up there. It really just affects the very bright parts of the picture, and by bringing that one up, it really helps to give a lot of dynamic in the picture. However, if you do that after adjusting the whites, you just want to go back and make sure that at the end nothing is clipped, of course. So I'm actually going to bring down the whites again. And the other sliders here, no set tactics that I have, just play around with them. I wouldn't go too far in any direction here, just because it kind of doesn't really work, at least in my experience. But you know, just go minus, plus a little bit, and at the end stick with whatever you like best. So that works pretty well. And the last thing here is point curve. You can change that value, and that way you kind of change the very fine contrast in your picture. You know, there's really a ton of different ways to change contrast and change different contrast in Lightroom. Really a lot more than just a contrast slider. So let me see here between default and medium and strong contrast. I think strong is definitely too much, but let me see if I like medium better than linear. And especially in these trees right here, I think it works just a little bit better, so I'm gonna stick there. And then down here, the GSL tool. This is not a tool that I work with very much, just because the impact is very little in most of the cases, so I usually just leave that out. But if you want to change anything here, I would definitely suggest you to grab this little pinpointer on the hue, saturation and luminance tool separately. Just go over a color you want to change, and then just drag up and down your mouse and just stick with whatever color you like best, whatever look you like best. But once again, because this has such a little impact in your photo, I'm just not gonna cover this for this tutorial. Then down here, the split toning, kind of already explained split toning. Shadows, I really don't use shadows very much, just because obviously light is naturally coming from the sun, the light source. So at the end, if you just enhance the color in the highlights, it will look more natural than if you add color in the shadows. However, it still might be something you want to play around with, and I mean, you can get some artistic looks or even get a little more differentiation in your photo. And actually, I might even add a little bit of greenish tint in this photo just for the trees, so there's a little bit more of a distinctive difference between the greens and the yellows. I mean, if I add something here, then it's really just a very small amount usually, but you know, it can be worth to play around with. But definitely the main thing you want to look out here is the highlights, because that definitely has the biggest adjustment in your photo. Then down here, the detail tool. This is a very important tool if you want to print your picture. If you're just sharing it on Facebook or Instagram, that won't have that big of an impact. But you know, if you just want the best possible look, the best possible quality, then you should definitely use the detail tool. So I'm zoomed here in 1:1, and actually amazing sharpness. This was actually shot with a 50mm f1.8 lens, so like a $100 lens on a Canon 600D, which is a very entry-level camera, and you see here this amazing detail from such a cheap lens camera combo that once again proves that you really don't have to have expensive gear to get great pictures. But let's actually go into the sharpening here, and I really love sharpening. I would not suggest you to add too much, otherwise, as you see here, it really makes everything look over sharpened and really takes away the natural look. But if you just add a little bit of sharpening, that can help a lot of the times, and that's something I do in quite a lot of my pictures, just because it really gets even more detail out of your photo. Then once you've added a nice value, I think I'm gonna go with around 40 here, you just want to make sure that you zoom back out again, hold down the Alt key and bring the masking slider to the right, and that way you will get the sharpening mask, and everything that is white is going to be sharpened and everything that is black is not going to be sharpened. So it's very important that you bring that slider to the right until your photo will look something like this. You know, all of the non-textured surface such as the sky or such as some of this concrete right here will not be sharpened, and that way you really prevent a lot of noise in your picture, because if you're just gonna sharpen any areas without any texture, you're of course just gonna add noise. So I really think that looks a lot better. Let's just quickly see the sharpening and masking at default, and here is it after. Just everything looks a little bit more sharp, and I mean, I'm not sure how well you're gonna be able to see that on YouTube once again, but if you print your picture, that really will be very visible. And the next thing would be noise reduction. Really don't like this tool. It doesn't do a great job in my opinion. If you're gonna raise that, you will get rid of noise, but you will also get rid of so much detail and so much sharpness. Once again, not quite sure how well you're gonna be able to see it, but the difference from here to here, you know, even just a little bit of noise reduction is quite severe, and it makes your picture look so much more plasticky. So I really would suggest you not to add any noise reduction unless you absolutely have to, and in this picture it's definitely not needed. And speaking of noise reduction, the third and last slider in the detail tool here is the color noise reduction, and that is actually a great slider. It really doesn't harm your picture in any way. It just gets rid of the purple and green sensor noise, which in this case I don't think is very prominent in this photo, but in quite a lot of the cases, especially in darker parts, you will see the difference really severely. And I really love this slider. I mean, it's definitely a thing that you should take advantage of, just because it doesn't harm, it really does only good for your picture. So I'm gonna zoom back out again, go down to the lens corrections and just do very quickly my two things, which is enable profile corrections, that will just get rid of the vignetting and the distortion, and then secondly go into the color and just click on remove chromatic aberration, and that will just get rid of the purple and green sensor noise in your photo, and that's definitely a nice thing to have. And then at the second last global adjustment tool, which is effects, here you can add some custom vignetting, which is actually a thing that I do quite a lot of the times. It really helps to give more attention towards the center of your picture. However, in this case, I really don't think it's needed. So I'm just gonna quickly skip to the last global adjustment, which is the camera calibration. And here, profile is a very important thing, and I definitely would suggest you to play around with these different profiles, just because they can really have a dramatic impact to your photo, and they can really change the overall look. But it can be sometimes pretty difficult to choose one, just because they are all looking pretty good in a lot of the cases. So let me just see here. Camera portrait is definitely way too bright, Camera standard works pretty well. Let's see, Adobe standard makes everything a little bit darker, and camera standard. I mean, at the end, I think I'm gonna stick with Adobe standard just because I kinda like this darkish mood. But in a lot of my pictures, I really changed that, and it really changed the way the picture looks. So definitely be sure to take advantage of that tool and at least see if there's anything you like better than the default. And then lastly, these primary color sliders really don't have a big impact, but if you're just learning Lightroom, or if you really wanna, every single percent you can get, then you can definitely play around with these. But I'm not gonna cover them for this tutorial just because knows a tactic, and once again the difference really isn't that big. So I think I'm done with the global adjustments, and it sometimes can be a great idea to just look at the picture and see if there's anything a little bit too much or if there's a bit more adjustments needed. I think in this picture I'm gonna go back to the split toning and just bring the color a little bit more towards the oranges, something like that. And yeah, I think that works even better. Really a small adjustment, but sometimes when you go back after adjusting all of the global adjustments and once again look at your picture, you really sometimes see something that you haven't seen previously. So I think I'm very happy with any of the other global adjustments, so now I'm gonna go into the local adjustments. And at the start where I adjusted the clarity, I've already added 2 graduated filters to kind of get rid of some of the clarity in the background and to add some of the clarity in the foreground. But I'm gonna grab another graduated filter here and just drag it over the very bottom of the picture and just try and bring down the exposure. Now this can sometimes work and it sometimes doesn't. Let's just see here before, after. I actually think it kind of works, and that way you really get to close out your picture and really differentiate the exposure once again and really get the attention to stay in the center of the photo. And I'm actually gonna try the same thing with the very top, although I don't think it is gonna work here in this photo. And yeah, indeed, it really doesn't work, so I'm just gonna delete that filter for the top. That's a great thing. You can just try out things, and if it doesn't work you can just delete it. A really great thing. I'm going to grab another one though and just try and drag it a little bit over the right corner kind of the picture, very soft, and just kind of reduce the exposure and do the same thing for the left. And this way I kind of create some custom vignetting, but I really enjoy making custom vignetting rather than just going into the effects and adding global vignetting, because the global vignetting adds vignetting in all corners equally, so that's sometimes a good thing, but in a lot of times I like to just have full control over my vignetting. And I don't think any more graduated filters are needed here. However, I am going to add some dodge and burning with the radial filter. Dodge and burning is making individual parts of the picture darker or brighter, and that way you really can create a lot of depth, a lot of interest, and really complexify the light. And it's a really powerful tool, and it really can make your pictures look a lot more complex, a lot more professional at the end. You just want to make sure that you invert the mask and that you bring the feather to 100 so all of your adjustments look natural, and then just drag different sized radial filters over your picture and either go down or plus with the exposure. Really, you don't want to do this too much, but just by going a little bit into the plus or minus, and then just once you have one, right click duplicate and maybe drag it over another part. That way you really can create a lot of dynamic and a lot of interest in your picture. So this, depending on how much you want to do this, can take 1 to 2 or maybe even 3 minutes. And there's really nothing I can explain. You just drag it over all of the parts of your picture, adjust the values and see if there's anything you like. and just leave it there. But I am going to speed this up, and I'll be right back once I'm done with dodge and burning. So I'm done after adding quite a lot of dodge and burning filters. Here is before and here is after. Just made everything a little bit more interesting. Now the effect on how big the effect will be is definitely depending on your photo. In this case it's not too big of a difference, even though I definitely like the tiny difference that it made, but in some pictures it can really change the way your picture looks. So definitely be sure to play around with dodge and burning. It really can complexify your picture a lot more. So as always, let's see the before and after. Really a long tutorial and a long history here, but I really just want to go in depth, and you can see a very different picture, kind of flat, a lot of color missing, not really any structure here in the foreground. And here is after, which looks a lot more vivid, a lot more interesting, and a lot better. It may look a little bit too much if you see the before and after directly compared, but once you look at the picture for a little while, it will start to look natural, and you really don't think about the before and after direct comparison anymore. And of course, if you still think it's too much, you can of course always dial back on these sliders and just go half the way that I have gone, but I really just love this very vivid and very in-your-face look on my pictures. So thank you very much for bearing with me through this tutorial. I really hope you could take some tips or techniques out of it. If you did so, please be sure to like the video, it really helps out the channel a lot. And if you did not like the video and you did not learn anything out of it, please dislike the video so I can improve my videos in the future. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more videos just like this one, other Lightroom tutorials, landscape photography edits, and even on location photography in the near future. I upload one photography related video every single day. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you can use some of these techniques in your own editing. Until next episode, I want to wish you a great day, and please take care.